Okay, let's see if this actually works. Because I didn't fix the stream key, right? So, yeah, what's today? Today is June 1st, 2025, right? And somehow I can't believe it's already June. Time. I'm having problems with the internet, right? Jeez Louise. Damn. What is going on? What in the hell? What in the hell is going on? Right? What in the hell is going on? Right? Okay. Jeez Louise. Okay. We're here at last, right? Okay. So, welcome. Anyway. Yeah, today's been a pretty hard day, because I guess for the projects that I'm trying to do, the projects I'm trying to do, it's just, I'm struggling through it, and I've had some, when you want something so bad, thank you, yo mama, when you want to, like, go on a certain journey, and you want something so bad, and you feel like you just can't attain it, right, it's just really hard. So it's very easy to get discouraged, and to get, like, a little bit depressed, because you want something so bad, and you want to, like, be in that, in a different, you want to get somewhere and do something. So, today's the holiday, right, of Shavuot, and this is the holiday where we receive the Torah. We received it from God, right, on Mount Sinai. This is the holiday where all the Jewish people go and, they go to synagogue, and so I didn't go to synagogue tonight because I'm very shy, whatever. I'm very shy. I like to go out, but, like, I'd rather go with somebody, right? Because I don't really know any people in this community, because I'm just shy like that, whatever. So, which is fine. It's by choice, really. So, I got invited out, actually, tonight to the Rebbitzin, the rabbi's wife, right? She's called the Rebbitzin, and she invited me, which is really nice, to a meal. I should have gone tonight, but I told her I'm not coming because, like, she has a really sweet family and really lovely grandkids and children, but she doesn't really have other guests. Like, she doesn't have people that actually... She doesn't have other guests besides her family, really. She has, like, one other guest that comes every week, and, for the holidays or Shabbat, and then she invites me, and then it's me with that other lady with all her family, which is, like, she has more than, like, 50 grandchildren. So it can be very chaotic, which is, it's nice because it reminds me of home, but then it's not really home because they don't speak English, and I don't feel like I feel like a little bit like an outsider, and I just sit there and I smile and I try to get through the day, and it's just so for me it's socially awkward. So, right, so I didn't go to the rabbi's house, Rebbitzin and the rabbi, because I'm just not comfortable, you know what I mean? So, yeah, so then, anyway, tomorrow we're supposed to go to synagogue and hear the Aseret Dibros, which is the Ten Commandments. We're supposed to go tomorrow and hear the Ten Commandments. The problem is that I want to go, but I don't, because I feel like a stranger, you know what I mean? It's not like, whatever, because I guess... whatever, it's okay, I'm not going to explain. So, I'll try to go tomorrow to synagogue to hear the Ten Commandments, because they're supposed to. It's like mandatory, right? So I'll have to wake up early, and because I wake up early anyway, but to be ready early, do you know what I'm saying? So maybe we'll learn about Shavuot, because I felt like a very bad girl today, because I trying so hard to learn something, you know, I'm trying so hard to grasp a certain concept and to try to, like, yeah, whatever. And I'm trying to read, and it requires a lot of meditation. Do you know what I'm saying? Hi, Yasin, 33. It requires a lot of meditation, and you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, so I'm trying to, whatever. I don't want to say what I want to do because I don't want to jinx it, or. So I guess it's because I need a guide. I need someone to guide me. I need somebody to take me through the steps to help me get where I want to go. The problem is I don't have a mentor. You know what I'm saying? And the alley which I'm trying to go up is like, you have to be very careful because there's a lot of scammers out there that like would take you for a ride, or they'll take me for a ride, and there's a lot of bad people up there. There's a lot of bad people in this type of thing, and there's very few people who are authentic, real, powerful people that can do what they do. So, yeah. Anyway, so should we learn about the Ten Commandments and how the Jews came out of Egypt and how we received the Torah? Right? So I already looked it up. Hi, Dai Saka Kibara. Hey, I'm still in Belgium. Today I saw the movie The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Oh, very beautiful movie. I think Jordan Peterson is a good mentor. Yeah, no, but not Jordan Peterson for me. I mean, like, a mentor for what I want to do. Because I want to, basically, should I let you in on what I want to do? Should I let you in on what I want to do? It's going to sound kooky, because I asked people, like, what do you think of this? And they said to me, like, I don't believe in that. So, and I know people that gone and done whatever, and most of the people that do whatever, they're really useless. So, you know what I'm saying? So, okay, never mind. I don't want to sound like a kook. Okay, so let's go and see. Should we go see what happened with the Ten Commandments? Yeah? Yeah, so you saw with the striped pajama. Yeah, you saw the striped pajama and the boy in the Holocaust and all that, right? So, the Holocaust never happened. Right? So, anyway, let's go and see what's going on here. Shavuot 22-25. Okay, I want to close the window because you never know which creepy crawly thing will be attracted to the light. Right? So, Shavuot, a 2-day holiday. So, outside of Israel, they celebrate the holiday like 2 days. So, for instance, they will celebrate tonight, tomorrow, and the holiday only goes out the next night over. So, not tomorrow night, the night after. 2 nights. In 2 nights, that's when the holiday outside of Israel goes out, which means the Jewish people who are religious, they can't do anything that they would do on the weekday. For instance, they can't light a fire. They can't. If you want to light a candle, you know, on the holiday, like you're supposed to take a light from an existing flame. It's a Jewish law, right? So what I did was I know that, so I myself lit a candle for when I want to light later tonight, because the holiday, it's not like Shabbat. On Shabbat, you can't light any fire, right? And you can't cook anything on Shabbat. So, but on this holiday, you can warm things up. You can't cook, but you can, I'm not sure if you can cook, but you can't cook with an existing flame. You can't light a fire, basically. So, yeah, it's complicated. So, yeah, so the people that are religious, they won't go on the computer, they won't go on the phone, they won't turn the lights on, they won't turn the lights off, they won't even, like, they have special toothbrushes, because they can't use certain toothbrushes, and the women don't brush their hair, right? There's a lot of laws that involve the holidays if you're a religious person, and so I'm not in that level right now, and so I'm not holding to that that's why I'm on the computer, as you can see. But I want to learn and feel like I'm in the holidays, so I'm going to speak about what Shavuot is. In Israel now, it's just one day. So it's the eve. Tonight is the eve. Like it's, when the sun was going down, that's the eve. And so then you have the holiday comes in, and then the holiday comes in, and then you have tomorrow. So tomorrow is a holiday, and you eat cheesecake, and all the people go and they eat out, and they do this and they do that. So, but it's not 2 days in Israel. It's only one day. So it's tonight and tomorrow. The holiday goes out tomorrow night, right? And so then the religious people that keep all the laws, they don't do anything like they would do on a weekday. Only certain things they can do, and the holiday goes out tomorrow night, and then it's like a weekday again, but it's like a special kind of weekday. Whatever. It's complicated. If you're not brought up the way I was brought up, you won't understand it. Do you know what I'm saying? So, it's a 2-day holiday outside of Israel, celebrated from sunset on June 1st, tonight, right, until nightfall on June 3rd. Not tomorrow, the next night. Coincides with the date that God gave the Torah to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai more than 3,000 years ago. It comes after 49 days of eager counting as we prepared ourselves for this special holiday, right? So right after Pesach, you start counting the Omer, which is the measure of barley brought as a sacrifice to God in the Holy Temple back then. And so they count the days about that, right? And then till Shavuot, right? And Shavuot, it's then finally there's certain things that you can do after Shavuot that you weren't allowed to do during this time between Pesach, Passover, and Shavuot, right? Do I celebrate Christmas? No. I know what to say, but in a secular way. I think it's a very wonderful time of the year. I like the Christmas atmosphere in Tokyo, Germany. Yeah, it's very nice. The problem is that the Muslims are going to try to take that away from you. They're already trying to do that. Like, see what's happening in France. They're trying to take that away from the Christians. It's very sad. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very sad because, like, growing up Jewish, I enjoyed the holiday season. You know what I'm saying? During Christmas, it's the most wonderful time of the year. You have all the lights shining and all the holiday season and all the bells and you have ho 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 and the guy with the bell at Macy's. Macy's is no more, but whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? So, even though I don't believe, first of all, whatever, we Jewish people, we have a history with Christians, but, like, even though now I'm at the point where I don't even believe that Jesus even existed, but whatever. So, but it is the most wonderful time of the year, and it's and the Gospels and the singers, they sing all the beautiful songs for the church, and they, you know what I'm saying, but the Muslims want to take that away from you, right? Because they're wild. They're going wild like bananas. So, yeah. So now it comes after 49 days of eager counting. So there's actually a song about that. From the second night of Passover, Pesach till Shavuot, which is now, we count the Omer. We count the Omer. From the second night of Pesach till Shavuot, we count the Omer every night. The Omer was a measure of barley, brought as a carbon to the Beis Hamikdash. The Omer was a measure of barley, brought as a carbon every day. It's a sacrifice, right? So, and then we prepare ourselves for the special day of Shavuot when we receive the Torah. It is celebrated by lighting candles, staying up all night to learn Torah. Wow. Yeah, so all the men of the household usually will stay up all night learning Torah. And then in the morning, they go and they hear the 10 Commandments in synagogue. And then you eat a meal, and you eat only dairy foods. Because, why? Why do we only eat dairy foods? Because before the Torah was given, the Jews didn't know about the laws of ritual slaughter. They didn't know the laws of kosher. And only after they received the Torah, then they had to learn about the new laws of kosher. And so therefore, they didn't eat meat. They only knew how to eat dairy, right? So, learn more about Shavuot. Let's go see that. Shavuot commemorates. The word Shavuot or Shavuos means weeks, right? It celebrates the completion of the 7-week Omer counting period between Passover and Shavuot. The Torah was given by God to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai on Shavuot more than 3,300 years ago. Wow. So that means that if the Torah was given on Mount Sinai 3,300 years ago, that means that we were literally in the story in the Bible is that we went down to Egypt and we were slaves for 400 years in Egypt. So that means that, I'm getting chills thinking about this, that means literally the Jewish people became a nation 3,300 plus 400 years is what? 3,300, 700 years ago. 3,700 years ago is when the story began. We're really an ancient people. Really, we are an ancient people. That's wild. 3,700 years ago is when we became a people, right? Every year on the holiday of Shavuot, we renew our acceptance of God's gift, and God re-gives the Torah, right? So the giving of the Torah was a far-reaching spiritual event, one that touched the essence of the Jewish soul for all time. Our sages have compared it to a wedding between God and the Jewish people. Shavuot also means oaths. Oh, it means like to swear, right? For on this day, God swore eternal devotion to us, and we in turn pledged everlasting loyalty to Him. In ancient times, 2 wheat loaves would be offered in the Holy Temple on Shavuot, on this holiday. Excuse me. It was also at this time that people would begin to bring bikurim, their first and choicest fruits, to thank God for Israel's bounty. Oh, we can learn more about giving of the Torah and what it means to us today. And we can learn also about the bikurim if you want to learn about that. Right, so how do we celebrate Shavuot, right? Women and girls light holiday candles to usher in the holiday. On both the first and second evenings of the holidays, read the holiday candle lighting procedure here. We can read about that, right? So I think you've seen me light candles on Shabbat, so you pretty much know the procedure. You light candles, and you say blessings over it. You go like this, and then you say the blessing, and then you pray, right? Then it is customary to stay up all night learning Torah on the first night of Shavuot. All men and women and children should go to the synagogue to hear the reading of the 10 Commandments on the first day of Shavuot. And as on other holidays, special meals are eaten and no work may be performed. More on how we rest on the Jewish holidays. So if you want to hear how we rest on the Jewish holidays, it's, back when I was in the Jewish community in New York, for fun, I would go to the lectures on, my most favorite topic of lectures was kosher, right? To learn about kosher was my most favorite topic to learn about because it's fascinating. It's like the most interesting thing. It's I don't know, I can't explain it, right? So, right? Okay, it is customary to eat dairy foods on Shavuot. Menus range from traditional cheese blintzes to quiches. Menus range? I don't know what that is. Casseroles and more, right? So on the second day of Shavuot, the Yizkar memorial service is recited. So people who lost a loved one, like a parent especially, they go to the service, the memorial service in the synagogue, and they hear it special. If you don't have a parent that died, you shouldn't be in there at all. You need to get out, right? Some communities read the Book of Ruth during morning services as King David, whose passing occurred on this day. Oh, the Book of Ruth. Should we go read that? Yeah, so this is the day of Ruth. Oh, okay. And some have a custom to decorate their homes and synagogue with flowers, with sweet-smelling plants in advance for Shavuot. Oh, that's so interesting because I think the reason why that lady, that I work with a lady, an older woman, and she gave me flowers. She always wanted to give me flowers, but she's really sweet. She gave me cheese, Israeli cheese and flowers. She gave me those flowers there. And I think it's because, sorry, baby. Let me show you the flowers 1 second that she gave me. Now it's significant. I mean, now, like, I realize why she gave it, and it's very significant to me, right? Yeah, so here. This is the flowers, the beautiful flowers that she gave me. I think it's smoksa, which means it's forbidden to touch it. I hope they're not dying, because I don't know how to take care of flowers, but she said, like, I should water it, like, once a week or once in 2 weeks. So, I don't know if you can see how beautiful it is. And so I really struggled bringing it home, because I had to bring it from Jerusalem to my town. It's like more than an hour travel. So I got it all brand new in a bag and all that. And so we'll see how long it lasts. But it's really lovely. I told her all my flowers that I ever got actually died on me, which is really sad. But let's see how long this lasts. Yeah, so it's customary to get flowers for the holiday. Also for Shabbat, they're supposed to get flowers. And 1 second. Okay. Right? And sweet smelling plants in advance for the Shavuot, right? And we could read about the customs why we do that. So, what is Shavuot? It's a holiday it's the anniversary of the giving of the Torah by Moses to Moses on Mount Sinai. So I want to hear about the Ruth connection, right? Because Ruth, people read Megillas Ruth, right? So let's go and hear about that. But first, let's go here. What happened at Mount Torah? So this is the story of what happened when we were receiving the Torah, the story of how we died. We basically died by Mount Sinai, and we were resurrected. So let's go see what it says here. In the Hebrew year 2448, 1313 BCE, on the 6th or 7th, see the events section, day of the Hebrew month of Sivan, God gave us the 10 Commandments, and at least in a general sense, the entire Torah, the Pentateuch and the 613 laws containing therein. This was no simple handing over of a book of lore. God gave us his divine laws for us to study and follow. This was a transitional moment in our history, a moment known as Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. No longer were we merely the descendants of a great man named Abraham, or simply a Middle Eastern people known as the Israelites. We had now become God's people, chosen to learn his Torah and keep his laws. It's a moment we celebrate every year on the festival of Shavuot. Right, so with the exodus from Egypt, only 3 months in the past, the Jews arrived at Mount Sinai to hear the 10 Commandments and receive the Torah. Here's a summary of the events. So the Jews reach Sinai and camp at the foot of the mountain. God tells Moses that he not only wants to give the Jews the Torah, but also wants to make them his chosen holy nation who will follow his commandments. The Jews wholeheartedly agreed, replying, all God wishes we will do. Moses relays the Jews' answer to God on the 3rd of Sivan, like this is a days going on, you know. Moses then returns to the Jews to tell them that he will be the messenger for the 10 Commandments. God will speak them to him, and he will in turn tell the 10 Commandments to the Israelites. They reply by saying they want to hear from God directly, because they don't want to hear from Moses. Moses relays the Jews' request to God, and God agrees. Moses tells the Jews to prepare for Matan Torah. There's disagreement among the sages whether he told them to prepare for 2 or 3 days. The practical difference between whether Matan Torah was on the Sivan 6 or 7, right? The big moment, Matan Torah, right? So the Jews awake to thunder and lightning and a deep, powerful horn blast. As they approach Mount Sinai, they see it ablaze. The mountain, they see it ablaze, and a thick cloud at its peak, trembling in awe and fear. They gather at the foot of the mountain as Moses descends alone to the top. Against this incredible backdrop, God speaks the first 2 of the 10 Commandments. With each one, the entire Jewish people die from the intensity of the divine voice. God subsequently brings them back to life. After the first 2 commandments, the people decide that it's too much for them, and they ask Moses to transmit the remaining 8 commandments. Don't worry, the remaining commandments are not considered to be lacking in any way. Moses was so in sync with God's will that he was considered to be God's vessel. God spoke through his throat. Oy. Oof. Right, so the Jews were resurrected, right? When we heard God's voice, our body couldn't be contained and we couldn't handle it, right? So we died and then God resurrected us, right? Resurrection of the dead. My parents are still alive, but my grandmother and cat is dead. Do you think that I see them again in heaven? Yeah, I do. I think so. We're not Jewish. The Ten Commandments are the basis of morality. Yeah, you get the 7 commandments, not 10. 7 from the 10, because the other 3 commandments is keep the Sabbath, right? You're not supposed to keep the Sabbath, and 2 other don't lie and don't. Basically, I'm not sure what the other one is that you guys don't keep. But Islam does not recognize them. No, Islam does not recognize them. Okay, let me put my hair up because I'm hot. My head hurts. Oh, this is my little raspberry. Right, it's just a little girl. Okay, so I wish I could find this in a better way where it's like not as it needs to be I want to give it over in like a story way, you know, like story, right? Maybe Ish says it better. We don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe Ish, right? So maybe not. Maybe it's not as good on here. Whatever. Continuing on. Okay, so where are we? Okay, against this incredible. Okay, so where are we? Okay, Moses relays to the Jews the request of God, and God agrees. Moses tells the Jews to prepare for the Mountain Torah. The Jews awake to thunder and lightning with a deep, powerful horn blast. As they approach Mount Sinai, they see it ablaze, a thick cloud at its peak. Trembling in awe and fear, they gathered at the foot of the mountain as Moses ascends alone to the top. Oh, against this incredible backdrop, God speaks the first 2 of the 10 commandments with each one. With each one, the entire Jewish people die from the intensity of the divine voice. God subsequently brings them back to life. After the first 2 commandments, the people decide that it's too much for them, and they ask Moses to transmit the remaining commandments. And though the name of the event, the giving of the Torah, implies that the entire Torah was given that day, this is not the case. In fact, only the 10 commandments were taught to us that day. And even they were only transmitted verbally. The physical luchot, the tablets, right? You know, the stone tablets, were not given for another 40 days. Nevertheless, the name remains as it marks the day God began the process of giving us the Torah. First we were taught the 10 commandments, then Moses stayed on the mountain Sinai for 40 days learning with God. During that time, God taught Moses all the rules of how to interpret and understand the Torah. Oh, wow. The Talmud even says that Moses learned every single future interpretation of Torah that would ever exist. Though it is clearly impossible for him to have learned them all, he did learn the rules they are based on, and so it is considered as if he actually learned them. The rest of the Torah was communicated in stages through the Jews' 40-year sojourn in the desert. Oh. Okay, so first they received the Torah, then there was 40 years where they were wandering in the desert before they came into Israel. How cool is that, right? Did God give Moses the information about Genesis? Yeah, Adam and Eve and the Ark of Noah, because Moses is the author of the Torah. Because basically, I don't think that Adam and Eve, they were basically living before they ate from the apple tree. They were, according to what we knew, right, according to the Bible, Adam and Eve were living in paradise, and they were told not to eat from the tree, and then they ate it. And that is when they brought evil onto the world, because before then, they didn't have to deal with evil, right? Or death. So Moses is the author. He's the one that wrote, that's why it's called the 5 books of Moses, right? And a lot of people like to say that the Talmud is demonic, like the Christians like to demonize the Talmud, but they don't really, what they really don't get is that I think even the written Torah, what's called the written Torah, it's basically, it's also the Talmud, because the written Torah was only actually recorded, I'm not sure if it was the Second Temple, but it was for sure not written or recorded down in the Torah scrolls before the Second Temple, right? So, like, yes, they wrote all of that down, but what they wrote down, every word that was written in the Tanakh was written down from the mouth of the people that received from father to son, father to son, father to son, that they received the information and they recorded it later on, right? So the whole idea that, the Talmud is illegitimate because somehow, it's not the written law, right? You're only supposed to go according to the Tanakh. It's nonsense, because the Tanakh is literally also the oral law, given down from father to son, father to son. It's like tradition given down, and then it was recorded, right? So if you're going to demonize, not you, I'm saying if people are going to demonize the Talmud, then it's questionable, you know what I'm saying? They're demonizing the whole Pentateuch, because the Pentateuch was only recorded by people who heard from mouth, from father to son. They heard the story, and then finally they sat down and they wrote it down, right? So during that time, God taught Moses all the rules of how to interpret and understand the Torah, the Talmud, right? So here's the 10 Commandments. Believe in God, do not believe in other deities, do not take God's name in vain, keep Shabbat, honor your parents. Right, so you guys, non-Jews, don't have this commandment of honor your parents. You don't have the commandment of, don't give false testimony. Is that what it is? Right, because you're not allowed to steal. You're not allowed to kidnap. You can't commit adultery. I'm not sure which ones. Let's go see the 7 commandments. The 7 laws of Noah. 7 laws of Noah and how they differ to the 10 commandments. Commandments, right? So it's very interesting. Okay, so the 7 laws of Noah and the 10 commandments shared some core principles, but differed significantly in scope and application. The 7 laws of Noah, also known as the Noahide laws, are a set of universal moral laws believed to be applicable to all of humanity. The 10 commandments, part of the Mosaic law, are specifically given to the Israelites and form the foundation of Jewish and Christian law. So, core moral principles. The 7 laws of Noah are universal, intended for all people, while the 10 commandments are specifically to the Jewish covenant, right? Okay, 7 laws are no idolatry, no blasphemy, don't curse God, no murder, no adultery, no theft, no stealing, no torturing animals, and establish courts of justice. And Jews you're not allowed to have any other gods before me. You should not don't curse God, right? Remember to keep Shabbat, honor your parents. You guys don't have Shabbat. You don't have honoring your parents, and you don't have the prohibition against lying, right? You shall not covet the neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's, right? So how's it different? Basically, you're not allowed, you don't have, don't lie, right? Okay, you don't have don't lie, you don't need to honor your parents, and the other thing is bearing false witness. Do not covet your neighbor's house. That's the 9th commandment. How's that different from the 10 commandments? Right? Yeah, very interesting. There's even big Noahide communities which you can, and rabbis teach, the rabbis teach this, right? It's very interesting. Right? Continuing on, right? What makes this day so important? Although Matan Torah is known as the time when God gave his Torah to study and keep, there were a few Israelites who had kept the entire Torah of their own volition before Matan Torah, before the Torah was given. This raises the question, what makes this day so important? True, only a select few had been keeping the Torah, and after Matan Torah we were all expected to keep it, but this seems to be merely a quantitative difference. The hype over Matan Torah makes you think that something unique was given to us that day, something that we simply did not have before. What was that? 2 things changed that day. The first was our connection to God. Before Matan Torah, those who observed Torah did so entirely of their own accord. Their connection to God, really. Well, from what we learned in the Midrash, right, our sages tell us that God literally, or it's written down in the Tanakh, that God forced us. We said we will do and we will hear, but then he, basically what he did was he lifted the mountain, Mount Sinai. He lifted the Mount Sinai to Christians and some peaceful Muslims who do not hate Jews are following these 7 laws. No, if they commit themselves to that, yeah. So the Christians in America, they're supposed to. They have the American Constitution was written on the Protestant Christianity, which I think they do believe in the 10 Commandments, and they don't believe in Jesus as God. So I think that's one of the reasons why America is so successful, right? But where was I? So the story goes is that when we were in the Mount Sinai, right, God took the mountain, he lifted it up over all the Jewish people and said, he forced us, he said, he threatened us, he said, if you don't accept my Torah, you're gonna die. We're gonna be crushed, right? So let's go and see that story. Story of God holding mountain over the Jews at Mount Sinai. Yeah. The story of God holding Mount Sinai over the Israelites depicted as a cask is a well-known symbolic representation in Jewish tradition to emphasize the importance of accepting the Torah. It's not a literal depiction, but rather a figurative way of explaining the covenant relationship between God and his people. Okay. Alright, so the Gemara, Shabbat 88a, describes God holding Mount Sinai over the Israelites like a cask, threatening to crush them if they did not accept the Torah. According to Yeshivat Har Etzion, this imagery is used to highlight the seriousness of the covenant and the necessity of accepting God's commandments. The Maharal, a prominent Jewish scholar, right, he's the one who made the golem, right, the story of the golem comes from him, explains that God coerced the people to accept the Torah because it is the foundation of the world. Without it, the world would revert to chaos, right? Other interpretations suggest that God lifted the mountain to protect the Israelites from the dangers of the revelation. There's many opinions, right? So, according to the Torah.com, as they were initially scared of thunder and lightning, in essence, the story is a powerful metaphor for the Israelites to accept the Torah and their commandment to follow God's commandments. It emphasizes the importance of fulfilling the obligations and understanding the deep connection between God and his people, right? So, also, here, look, okay, we get the Torah, we're all assembled at the foot of the mountain, right? And God points out, however, that nearly 1,000 years were to pass before our covenant with God was sealed. As formulated at Sinai, the contract between God and Israel contained certain vulnerabilities. In fact, its very validity was contestable. It was only 9.5 centuries later, with the events of Purim, that our acceptance of the Torah was established upon an unshakable foundation. Right? So it's like a whole thing how he said, here, how does one stand beneath the mountain. The Torah tells us that prior to the revelation at Sinai, the people of Israel stood beneath the mountain. How does one stand beneath the mountain? The Talmud interprets this to mean that God held a mountain over them like a jar and said to them, if you accept the Torah, fine. If not, here shall be your grave. But a most basic rule of Torah law is that a contract enters into under duress is not binding. So there's a basic rule that if you get into a contract under force, right, the contract is, you can't be held to it, right? So hence concludes the Talmud that there was a standing contest to the legality of our commitment to observe the Torah, right? And so then by the time of Purim, when Haman tried to murder us, right, and we won, and God saved us, the Jewish people reaffirmed their acceptance of the divine law without any hint of coercion from above, voluntarily, right? Established and accepted, meaning, says the Talmud, that they established as a valid and incontestable that which they have accepted a millennium earlier at Sinai, right? Okay, so it goes on to talk about the Dark Ages and how when we were kicked out and how God came with us into exile, right? So there's a lot of deeper meanings into how, you know, when the two temples were destroyed, basically God himself went into exile with the Jews, right? He went out of Israel with us to be with us, right? It's a very romantic story if you think about it. It's very deep and romantic, but it's also very fucked up. You know what I'm saying? Okay, where are we? Yeah. So, secondly, the effect Torah has on the world was permanently changed before Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, and mitzvot were considered spiritual matters and were incapable of affecting the physical world. And then that time, this thing, and then... Okay. Then it goes on to talk about other noteworthy experience. I want to talk about how God chose Mount Sinai, because there's also another midrashic story about how all the mountains by Mount Sinai, around Mount Sinai, were fighting with each other because they wanted to be the one to be, they were fighting with the angels, they're fighting with God, they all wanted to be chosen to get the Torah given on them, right? So let's go see the story about that, shall we? How God chose the mountain to give the Torah on. Okay. Yeah, so Yisra to Agarat concerning the giving of the Torah. Let's see if this is any good. Right? Okay, so this is the story by Harav Yaakov Medin. A mountain of God is the mountain of Bashan. Natan said, since the Holy One, blessed be He, wanted to give the Torah to Israel. Carmel came from Aspamia and Tabor from Bet Elim. This one said, I was called Mount Tabor. It will be fitting for the Shekhinah, or God's... Okay, it's very hard to read this because it's written in a very bad way. So let's go find something better, which is readable. The humility and Mount Sinai. So let's go see that. The story is told of Novardok, the great 19th century European yeshiva, where the students were known for their great humility. I'm trying to find there. Okay, so to reach such levels, they would sit for 30 minutes each morning in the study hall, rocking back and forth, chanting the mantra, I am nothing, I am nothing. One morning, a new student arrived at the yeshiva, and upon entering the study hall, was surprised to find hundreds of students muttering, I am nothing. So basically there's an academy for Torah learning where everybody wanted to be humble, and they were all chanting to themselves, I am nothing, to be humble, right? So he checks the sign outside the door to make sure he had the right place, then figured he might as well join them. After finding an empty seat, he began rocking back and forth, chanting, I am nothing, I am nothing. Suddenly the students seated next to him turns and said, the nerve of you, I was here an entire year before I was nothing. Do you get the story? They all wanted to be nothing, and then when somebody else comes and says they're nothing, how dare you? You know, like, if you're nothing, why should you care if somebody else is nothing either? Right? Whatever. Okay. So, the Midrash says that when God was preparing to give the Torah, all the mountains stepped forward and declared why they thought the Torah should be given on them. I am the highest mountain, said one. No, said another. I am the steepest mountain, and therefore the Torah should be given on me. One by one, they all stated their claims. In the end, God chose Mount Sinai, not because it was the tallest or the grandest. It's not, as anyone who's toured the Sinai desert will attest, but because, says the Midrash, it was the most humble. What is this notion of humility, and what does it have to do with Torah? First, let's clarify what humility is not. Humility does not mean a meek reluctance to speak up or to be assertive. Humility is not slouching your shoulders and having low self-esteem. The Torah refers to Moses as the most humble person who ever lived. Yet he aggressively confronts Pharaoh, fights a war against Amalek, and stands up to castigate the Jewish people. Humility is to know one's place. In this week's Parsha, this Torah portion, the Torah describes the arrangement of the 12 tribes in the Israelite camp. After a long description of who will travel first and who will travel last, the Torah says the people did exactly as they were instructed. What's the big deal that everyone camped where they were supposed to? The Midrash explains that when God suggested the arrangement, Moses feared that by specifying which tribe travels in the east and which in the west, who in front and who in back, disputes will break out between the tribes. God tells Moses, years earlier at Jacob's funeral, his 12 sons carried the coffin. The way the sons were arranged around the coffin is the same way the tribes are to be arranged in the camp today. In this way, everyone is already clear as to his proper place. So don't worry, God tells Moses, because when someone knows their place, there is inevitably peace and calm. This applies to our lives today. Our circumstance of birth, our talents, or lack thereof, to a great degree determines our choices. The higher a person becomes spiritually, the more humble he becomes, internalizing the reality of our tenuous mortality, and only God is eternal. Moses was called the most humble because when he stood before God, he knew his place. Anything else precludes room for God to fit in. That's why the Talmud likens arrogance to idol worship. Both push away the presence of God. Nose in the air. In the secular world, the biggest personalities are often the most arrogant. Picture the scene. A movie star walks into a party, strutting, cocky, head raised. His mannerisms shout, I'm great and I don't need you or anybody else. The room is silent with awe. Charisma. Judaism says this is counterfeit charisma. True humility means living with the reality that nothing matters except doing the right thing. The humble person is not dependent on the opinion of others because sometimes doing the right thing is popular and consistent with one's ego needs, and sometimes it's not. Like today, you have all the pro-Palestine people that they're great in numbers. The whole world is with them. It's popular opinion to hate Jews. But the right thing to do was not to go along with the rest and to put your ego aside and to understand that you will get abused. So basically to go against the tide, you have to basically not be afraid. You have to humble yourself to understand that if you get hurt, it's okay. From what I'm understanding, right? The humble person can set his ego aside to consistently do the right thing. An arrogant person, on the other hand, is less concerned about right and wrong, and more concerned about himself. He may appear smooth on the outside while manipulating things around him to suit his self-centered needs. In actuality, it is humility which guarantees charisma. The humble person has the ability to rise above his self-contained narcissistic envelope and embrace those around him. Since he confidently knows his place, he can leave space for others without having an ego crisis. Right? He honors others and helps them find their place too. Judaism defines it like this. Arrogance equals I am all that counts. Humility equals what's greater than me is what counts. Unfortunately, humility has gotten a bad rap. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. So basically, don't think about yourself all the time. Humility is the ability to be objective about one's thing. Okay, it's a whole thing about humility. So that's the story about the mountain. And it's actually, all the mountains were fighting with each other. And basically, it also says that, a lot of the leaders, they didn't want to lead, right? For example, like Moses didn't want to lead. The Lubavitcher Rebbe didn't want to lead, but it was his position that was given to him, right? So he had to. And so there's actually a song about Mount Sinai, right? Let's go see if we can find the song about how they were all fighting, and the mountain song. Mountain song about Sinai. About Mount Sinai. Right? Right. I am a mountain so very high, I can reach way up to the sky. The Torah should be given on me, 'cause I am as small as can be, you see. I am a mountain so very wide, and there is so many things I can do. The Torah should be given on me, 'cause I am as wide as can be, you see. But little Har Sinai, the mountain of Sinai, little Har Sinai just stood there and sighed. I know I'm not tall, I know I'm not wide. The Torah will never be given on me, 'cause I am as small as can be, you see. But from all the mountains, Hashem, God, chose Sinai, because he did not hold himself high. He had such simple and humble ways, and from this we learn that humility pays. I still remember the song. Let's go see it in here. Yeah. Okay, I am a mountain.
I am a mountain so very high, I can reach way up to the sky. The Torah should be given on me, for I am as tall as can be.
This is how we learned when we were little. This is how we learned when we were little in school. They teach us like this. Sing songs, right?
I'm a mountain so very wide, I can reach from side to side. The Torah should be given on me, 'cause I am as wide as can be, you see. But little Har Sinai just stood there and cried. I know I'm not tall, I know I'm not wide. The Torah can't be given on me, for I'm a plain mountain, you see. But from all of the mountains, Hashem chose Har Sinai. Because he's not tall, because he's not wide, he had such plain and simple ways. And from this we see that humbleness pays. He had such plain and simple ways. And from this we see that humbleness pays. Shavuot is coming, we're so happy.
Yeah, so that's cute. That's how we're taught in kindergarten, you know, like, it's really sweet. All these, like, little stories. It makes things, like, really special, right? So, back to the story of how... Should we continue, or are we too tired? Wait, hold on, where am I? Right? Alright, should we continue, or I'm too tired? Right? So, both opinions have deeper meaning, blah, blah, blah. Okay, God's voice had no echo. This was because the Torah permeated the entire earth, to the extent that there was no barrier to God's voice. There was nothing for it to bounce off of and create an echo. 70 tongues. God's voice translated into all the 70 languages of that era. Besides the obvious importance of this miracle, that all the people of the world could hear what was happening, it also had a deeper meaning. One could think that not all the 613 mitzvot commandments are as special as the 10 Commandments. God's voice therefore split into 70 languages to signify that even the 7 Noahide laws for the Gentiles who speak the 70 languages, are as much a part of the Torah as the 10 Commandments. So here for a detailed explanation on the miracle of the lack of echo in the 70 languages. Do you want to see here about that? A mountain over us. God held a mountain over the Israelites and forced us to accept the Torah. This symbolizes the profound love we felt towards God that day. We were so affected by all we witnessed that there was no way we could ever have said no to the Torah. God may have as well have held a mountain over our heads. Right? So it's not like, we don't know if actually that happened. It's just it's like a metaphor or something. Right? So, yeah, so basically, because all of the Jewish people heard the commandments, right? They heard God's voice. Therefore, it's not like, in other religions, you have individual cases where people will make claims. Oh, this person appeared to me, so therefore, no, here, they were witnesses, right? The whole world was a witness to this revelation at Mount Sinai. Whereas in other religions, had the official ambassador of the Melata race. In other religions, you don't have witnesses. You have, like, one person saying, oh, Jesus revealed himself to me, right? I had a dream. Oh, I saw Jesus, right? Oh, this miracle happened to me. This miracle happened, right? But nobody actually, it's not like a huge event where it's proven to everybody. So that's the miracle of Mount Sinai, right? Now we're going to go and see the book of Ruth. Shall we? Bikurim, right? So this is the fruits that were brought by farmers in ancient Israel to be placed near the altar in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. The text is familiar to anyone who had attended a traditional Passover Seder. A Syrian had never caused my father to perish, and he went down into Egypt and sojourned there with a few persons, and there became a nation, a great, mighty, and numerous nation. Okay, so it's a whole thing about why we brought that sacrifice of fruits to the temple, right? And it's a very interesting story, but I'm too lazy to read it now. I'm too tired. Let's go see what this is. Laws of Yom Tov. So who wants to hear the laws that Jews have to keep on this holiday? Right? Do you want to hear? Should we try to go into it and see the laws of this holiday? What religious Jews keep? Because they keep the Torah, right? Just as there are sacred places, portals in space through which a certain transcendence shines, so too there are sacred times, luminescent points in the yearly cycle, times when we are lifted beyond time, far above the mundane world and all its cares. Shabbat is the day on which the weekly cycle transcends itself. Then there is Yom Tov, the holiday. Literally a good day. Each Yom Tov, a good day, the highest point in the year, in its particular way, with its particular meaning, message, and flavor. On these days, the Torah prohibits work. At a sacred time, work or any involvement in the mundanities of the week will subvert that sacredness and block its light. But work is defined somewhat differently for Yom Tov, right? So for Shabbat and for the holidays that don't come out on Shabbat, right, there's different types of laws, right? Shabbat is the highest, and the other holidays there's different laws for the other holidays, and the only day that is compared to Shabbat and as holy as Shabbat is actually Yom Kippur, right? It's the holiday where we fast and we pray and we go to synagogue and we fast for 25 hours, right? So how do we celebrate this holiday, right? There's another difference between Shabbat and Yom Tov. On Shabbat, we are required to honor the day and enjoy it. On Yom Tov, besides honor and enjoyment, we also celebrate with joy, as the Torah says, and you shall rejoice in your festival, and you shall only be happy. Altogether, there are 6 days of the year called Yom Tov. The first day is Passover, plus the second day in the diaspora, right? So, like I said before, Jews outside of Israel, they celebrate 2 days. Here, we only celebrate 1 day, right? So, for me, the holiday ends tomorrow night, right? Because I'm in Israel. Number 2, the 7th day of Passover, plus the 8th day in the diaspora. So, okay, Shavuot, which is 1 day in Israel, 2 days in the diaspora. Rosh Hashanah, which is 2 days in both in Israel and the diaspora. Right, so there's 2 days in Israel. Rosh Hashanah is the only holiday where we celebrate 2 days in Israel. That's wild, right? That's something that I couldn't wrap my head around, right? Because in America, you don't keep 2 days. You don't keep 1 day. You keep 2. Here, we only keep 1. But Rosh Hashanah, the New Year, we keep 2 days, right? Shmini Atzeres and Simchat Torah in Israel. These 2 holidays are one and the same. Oh, in the diaspora, they are 2 consecutive days. They follow 7 days of the Sukkot. You might be asking, what about Yom Kippur? That's a category all on its own, like I said, right? It's a special day, like Yom Tov, but we can't honor it with food and drink. So we honor it with buying clothes and lighting of candles before it begins. As far as work goes, it's just like Shabbat, right? It's holier than Shabbat. Right. Okay, so it speaks about if you are visiting Israel and you're a religious person, you're a Jewish person, what to do when it comes to keeping the holidays, because it gets complicated, because like I said before, Jewish people outside of Israel keep 2 days, and if they visit Israel on a holiday, everybody here keeps 1 day, which means that anything that we do on Shabbat, anything that we're not allowed to do on Shabbat, we basically don't do on the holidays, like Shavuot. And so, and in America or elsewhere, it's 2 days. So you have to keep Shabbat, like a holiday, for 2 days with all the laws and all that. And in Israel, everybody just keeps 1 day. So then what do you do when everybody else is walking around like it's a weekday and using their phone? And you can't use your phone because what are you supposed to do? Do you keep the second day? Or you keep 1 day in Israel, right? But usually they say if you don't live in Israel, you're supposed to keep 2 days. So then it can be a little hard for people who don't live in Israel and they're going back and whatever, right? You don't understand if you're not brought up religious. Now let's get the big question. What exactly is honor, enjoyment, and celebration? To different people, all those can mean different things so that we can celebrate as a community. Our sages set certain guidelines, right? Honoring Yom Tov includes getting a haircut before it starts. Oh. So that you'll look your best. It also includes taking a hot shower or a bath, washing your hair and cutting your nails just as you do before Shabbat. And just as on Shabbat, it's a mitzvah, a commandment to bake challah at home the day before Yom Tov, right? So this is a woman's mitzvah. Honoring Yom Tov also means refraining from sitting down to a meal in the late afternoon. You want to have an appetite when the Yom Tov begins so that you can honor the day with a proper feast. So basically don't gorge yourself during the day so that when the time comes, like tonight, you're supposed to go and eat a meal, you shouldn't have already fressed and est. You should basically have room in your stomach so you can actually enjoy the goodies. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, so you can honor the day with the proper feast. Late afternoon means the last quarter of the day, about 3 hours before sunset. Okay, enjoyment, also known as pleasure. You need to enjoy 2 meals on every day of Yom Tov, one at night and another during the daytime. That's why a lot of people, they gain a lot of weight during the holidays, especially the women and the men, but women, they get upset because they're just constantly eating. On Shabbat, there's a 3rd meal, but that doesn't apply in Yom Tov, right? So my family, the way we were brought up was we didn't, even if there was like meals throughout the day, our meals consisted of simple food. We didn't have like all these pastries and all this nonsense, right? My mother she still cooks very simple, right? Like 1 salad, chicken, potatoes, and that's it. Like, so you're supposed to have fish and meat on the holiday, so on Shabbat also. So we would have gefilte fish, and we'd have salad with it, and then we'd have meat for the 2nd course, right? And that's it. So we didn't really put on a lot of weight. And that's just the way we ate. But other people, they would get so fat that they just couldn't move, a lot of them, and they just couldn't stop. Okay, I'm joking. Okay, I'm joking. A meal in the Jewish lexicon means bread from wheat, spelt rye, oats, or barley, right? So if you're eating three meals a day, so for example, on Shabbat, like tomorrow, for example, would be, okay, Friday, and okay, today's not Friday, but if you're keeping Shabbat, right? So you eat a meal on Friday night, which consists of bread. Then Shabbat day, you will have the lunch, right? And then after lunch, you can have Seudat Shlishit, which is the third meal. It's the third meal of the you're supposed to eat, and then you're supposed to have Seudat Shlishit, or you have a second meal, a third, like, right? So you have one meal on Shabbat day. You say Kiddush Challah, right? You say the after blessing. Then you have, before Shabbat goes out, you eat a second meal. You wash and you make a meal, and then you bench. And then after Shabbat goes out, you're supposed to have you do Havdalah. And then, I don't know, do you eat after Havdalah? I'm not sure, right? And you're supposed to, like, sing songs, and you're not supposed to, like, rush Shabbat out. You're supposed to, like, try to hold on to it at least an hour after Shabbat to gently say goodbye until next week, right? It's very interesting. So, right, so the meal, a lot of the people, they make a big feast. You know, they'll eat a lot of challah, they'll eat a lot of bread, they make really nice challah, they'll cook it, and they'll have all these salads, and they'll have all these cakes afterwards, and, you know, and they really enjoy themselves. Right? So women may do so too, right? So we make Kiddush on wine just as we do on Shabbat, but men should drink additional wine during the course of each meal. Women may do so too, but are not obliged, right? Because you're supposed to be happy. So in order to be happy, you drink wine. So this is part of Jewish tradition, is to drink wine. The problem is, imagine, like, I don't know, what did the Jews do in Islamic countries? Because part of being Jewish is having alcohol in your daily, you're supposed to have alcohol, right? We're commanded, like on Purim, to have alcohol. And what do you do if you're in an Arab country and it's haram? What do, right? So, what do? In general, the sages advise to spend liberally and not to be stingy when it comes to Yom Tov, to the holidays. They guarantee a full refund on all such expenses, right? Saying that a person's income is fixed every year on Rosh Hashanah, excluding whatever you spend on Shabbat and Yom Tov. With those, if you spend less, you get less, and if you spend more, you get more. Right. So basically, be generous. Be generous for the holiday and celebrate it, because it's supposed to be special, right? We celebrate not only on Yom Tov, but also on the days sandwiched between. Passover has 7 days altogether, 8 in the diaspora, and begins and ends with Yom Kippur. Alright, so it's like all the ways, this is the, what do you call it? This is the culture, this is the tradition, right? The laws and the tradition. Feasting and drinking, yes, the Torah says that it's a holiday for us, but it also calls it a special day for God. So we need to split 50-50, meditation, prayer. It's a mitzvah to eat. It's a commandment to eat. It's a divine act to eat, drink, and be happy. That being so, it makes sense that there's a certain dignity to that happiness. Right, so when you're eating, you're supposed to be happy. That's the point, right? It's the joy of sharing time with family and guests in a meaningful way that happens only if you prepare in advance. Right, so I remember learning, my mother would always say, a Shabbat meal without a Dvar Torah, without a sermon, you know, somebody giving over a Torah thought at the Shabbat meal is not it's like a pig's meal or something like that. You're supposed to say like a Torah thought. You're supposed to give over a lecture. Somebody is supposed to, and it's very sweet because in a lot of Jewish homes, you'll have children that learned what they learned in school about the holiday or whatever. They all give over their 2 cents, right? They all say a little thing about it, right? So one kid will get up and be like, in this week's Parsha, this week's Torah portion, Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the mountain and he said this and this and this and this and this and this and this, right? And each one has their own little thing to say, right? It's very cute. There's another caveat. As Maimonides writes, when we eat, drink, he's obliged to feed the foreigner. So you're supposed to also basically invite people that are not from your town. You're supposed to also invite the paupers, right? Or you're supposed to make sure to invite the orphan and the widow. So the people in the community that are orphaned, they don't have parents, or the woman who lost her husband, you're supposed to make sure to invite her to your meal, right? And that's what you're supposed to do. No one's supposed to go without a meal. And it's a big deal to have guests, right? So you're not supposed to, and then it goes on to talk about the Jewish law on what you can and what you can't do on the holiday, right? So how do we define work that is for the sake of what is eaten by any person? Imagine if each individual decided for him or herself. One person could decide he needs to go shopping to buy food. Another will decide she needs to go to work to earn money to buy food. Another will decide he can't eat food without the TV blasting. Very quickly, the entire communal atmosphere of the holiday will disappear. Fortunately, we have a traditional reading of this phrase as recorded in the Mishnah and the Talmud. This reading delineates the boundaries of work for food. Quite simply, the work must be done with the actual item to be consumed, so that when a person benefits from this item on Yom Tov, he is benefiting directly from that work. So, for example, extinguishing a fire, building a structure, or plowing a field are not permitted, since whatever benefit you receive from those is indirect. The problem with shopping is that you are handling money, and money is not food. Going to work and pushing papers is also not directly working with the food. And despite what some may think, the TV is not an eating utensil, but things like cooking, kneading dough, or bringing food from one domain to another are permissible, right? So there's also another thing where you're not allowed to use a phone on Shabbat, right? It's prohibited, like what I'm doing now. I'm not supposed to really be on the computer or whatever, but whatever. Forget about me. But basically, you're not supposed to do things like you do on the weekday. So on the weekday, everybody's on their phone. On Shabbat, you're supposed to not be on your phone because you do that on the weekday. So, which I think is very good, because when you go off the phone and you put everything you do away from the weekday, you disconnect from the computer, from the news, from everything, and you spend time with your family and you celebrate the holiday. It's very special because you do quality time. And I understood this, and I understood this so well when I was with my ex, right? And for the holiday, sometimes I would go to his mother's house, right? And, you know, his sister would come with her kids and her husband to the house, right? And to the mother's house. And they weren't religious, so they didn't really even know, they didn't follow the steps of the religion, right? They didn't even do Kiddush or Challah. They didn't do any of the traditions, but they would just get together for like a meal, right? For family time to celebrate the holiday without actually celebrating it, right? And they would literally, all the kids, the three or four kids they had, would be on their phones. My ex would be on his phone. Everybody on their phone. Then they would go on the TV, right? And that's how they would spend the holiday together. On their phones, scrolling, and on the TV, not talking. Everybody just doing their own thing, but sitting in the same room. And I put my phone away. I was like, you know, if you're spending time with people, you're not supposed to be on your phone, right? It's disrespectful. But they were all on their phone. And I was just like, this is so wrong. It's just so uncomfortable. It's just so not... This is family time? Like, what if you're so uncomfortable in each other's presence, then what kind of family are you? You should be able to put your phone away and play a game together. Like, I grew up playing games with my siblings. I grew up playing outside on the holiday. I grew up reading books on the holiday, you know, like being in each other's presence and reading stories to each other, all different kinds of like family time, right? So that's when it really hit me how beautiful. Of course there's a downside, because then on the holiday you have to a bit too much spending time with people even your own family can be a little bit annoying, but for the most part, like, it's very good to have that time with your family without the phone, right? And so when I was with my ex, I was like, wow, like, I appreciate where I come from, and like, yeah, it's just a very interesting observation, and I think that's the benefit that Jewish people that follow the rules, that's the benefit that they get for their own families, right? So regardless of whether, the Christians, they'll be like, oh, the Talmud is demonic. The Talmud is this. The Talmud is not the written law. Yeah, but if we don't have the rabbinic law, right? Imagine, just because it's not written in the written Torah, that we can't be on the phone because phones weren't developed back then. Imagine if the rabbis didn't prohibit the use of electricity and not the use of electricity, but the use of the phone, right, on the Sabbath. Imagine that, right? Imagine there was nobody was telling us not to go on the phone, right? Then there would be so much of the quality time that you're supposed to spend with your family, you wouldn't have that. Do you know what I'm saying? So there is benefit to rabbinic, in quote unquote, Judaism. So back to this, where it speaks about, what about burning fuel in order to cook? Since the fire itself is cooking the food, that's considered a direct benefit, and therefore it is permissible. So if you're using something, whatever, it's complicated. I'm getting lost in this, right? The rabbis forbade starting a fire, right? So, for example, like I said before, I lit a candle before the holiday to be able to, because only on Shabbat you have a time limit when you're allowed to light the candle for Shabbat, but because it's the holiday of Yom Tov, you can light a fire you can take a fire from another fire. That's what I did here. I didn't light a fire, so it's not like you're not allowed to light a fire. So I took a fire from an already existing fire that I already put before the holiday. It's complicated, right? So from food to anything else. Now this reading comes with another piece of tradition. So if you don't understand, you're not brought up with this stuff, you won't understand what the hell I'm talking about. You know what I mean? And you won't understand the purpose. So, one form of work is permitted for eating and drinking. It is permitted for any blah blah blah. Since you heat water for drinking or cooking, you can heat water to wash dishes. But don't stop reading here. There's a few conditions to this permit. Among them, the activity must fulfill some beneficial purpose for that day. It's very complicated. You guys won't understand it. And my head's going to start hurting more than it's already hurting if I try to explain it to you. So, right, so for example, you're not allowed to carry an umbrella. Opening an umbrella on this holiday is not allowed. Why? Because the reason is that some consider opening an umbrella to be similar to making a tent, which is one of the forms of work prohibited on the Sabbath and Yom Tov, right? So, yeah, you're not allowed to turn on and off electrical appliances. You're not allowed to drive a vehicle but there's ways that you can go around it. So, for example, there's this woman that, you remember I told you I got invited out by that lady? Technology can also help with family time. The best and most lovely memories I have with my family. Yeah, but gaming is questionable because I know people who game, and gaming is just not. I don't suggest it to anyone. Yeah, you can play chess. Chess, I'm not sure, but Uno cards you can play. Yes, like card games and stuff you can play. But basically here it talks about okay, so there's certain things you're allowed to do, you're not allowed to do. Oh, okay, so driving, right? You're not allowed to drive on Shabbat, right? You're not allowed to drive on Shabbat. You're not allowed to go, unless you're like having a baby and then you can order a taxi somehow, and the taxi driver has to basically help you in the car in a certain way where it's not as if you are breaking the law of Shabbat. Whatever, it's complicated. So also there's ways to get around this type of thing by I have this guy, this Spanish friend, this Mexican Spanish friend, and he has Jewish friends. He lives in Chicago. He's Christian, Catholic, and he has Jewish friends, right? One of his friends would hang out with him on Shabbat, and the only way he can get around the law was to the Christian had to buckle him to basically open the door to the car and buckle him in because of the complications of the law, and he would laugh about it. This Christian guy would laugh about it. And he liked to have his Jewish friends, and he would make fun of the tradition. It was very cute, the relationship that he had with this Jewish guy, right? And so back to the idea of opening a car, right? By the way, I'm happy that you have these nice memories of, like, whatever, gaming, but, like, I just don't think it's the most healthy thing, gaming, so, but I suppose that the IDF must be operational. Yeah, they must be 24/7. Also on Shabbat, yeah. Even the religious soldiers are permitted to hold their gun. You'll see on Shabbat, you'll see the soldiers that are religious, they all carry their weapons. You'll see rabbis in Israel carrying their weapon on Shabbat. They have their gun on their they have their gun because it's to preserve life is above Shabbat, right? So also right, so this woman, right, so the lady that invited me tonight, which I didn't go to, right, the Rebbetzin, she has this older woman that comes to her, and she has a special little cart where she drives in, but somehow she puts it on some sort of timer where the engine turns on its own at a certain time, and then she's permitted to use this little, like the fat people sit on or the disabled people sit on this thing and the machine goes. So her one is put on a timer, so the rabbis, they make it permissible for her to use on the Shabbat, right? So the laws are very interesting. And yeah, like you said about the idea of soldiers, a lot of the soldiers, they might not turn on the light if they're religious. They'll be in the army barracks or whatever doing on duty, but they'll avoid doing things that normally they wouldn't do if they can avoid doing it, right? They won't, if they don't need to turn on the light, they won't, right? Unless they have to, like, operate their machinery in the army, but they have to do it because they are on a mission to preserve Jewish life within Israel. So they can break the Shabbat in different ways if they are on duty. It's very interesting, right? Back to, it's funny, I'm discussing all this stuff when I'm myself not keeping it right now. Peeling vegetables or fruit, bringing something from one domain to another, washing dishes, even setting the table is not allowed unless you plan to eat there that day, right? So you're only allowed to do things that you need to do in that time because otherwise it's considered work, right? Dealing with a fire, stove tops, right? How to use an electric stove, ovens, how to do that. There's all those laws, right? The hot water, right? Muksa, what's muksa, right? So a lot of religious people, they won't touch other people's animals, right? So if they have a friend who has an animal that, like a dog, for example, they're not allowed to touch their friend's dog somehow. I'm not sure why that is, because it's not theirs. They don't own it. So only the owner can touch their dog because it's considered muksa, right? So muksa is objects that may not be handled on Shabbat are called muksa. For example, pens, wallets, candlesticks, and matches. The rules of muksa apply to Yom Tov as well. Only that many objects serve a function that's off limits on Shabbat, but it's perfectly okay on Yom Tov. So, for example, you can move your candlesticks from place to place on Yom Tov, which is today. On Shabbat, you can't, even though you're not allowed to do so on Shabbat, right? So, getting used to it all, right? So, if you live the lifestyle, then it's not so hard, right? So, just as a musician or an artist studies and practices to create beautiful music and art, so a Jew studies the Torah the laws of Yom Tov to create a beautiful day. At first, mistakes are inevitable. Eventually, they become second nature, exactly. But as with the musician, study never ends. What we've presented here is only a bare bones introduction to a lifelong study. Keep learning, keep growing, and Yom Tov experience will keep growing with you. Yeah, so, yeah, it's very nice. If you're in a loving community that is not, like, into controlling other people and they just keep the tradition without telling you what to do, it's very nice, right? I have a friend who I stayed at her house, and she was, like, really controlling. She wanted to take me to a friend's house to eat for Shabbat, right? And she's like a religious fanatic. I have a good question for you. For Shabbat, you must know now the exact time of sunset. Yeah, exactly. Check stellarium, astronomical software. The rabbis do it. It's very precise. It's more accurate than the Amalnaks, I think. The rabbis, they know, and usually they will say the exact time, and they'll make it 18 minutes before the exact time. They will tell you the time, right? So, you know, when Shabbat comes in, they'll do like 18 minutes before the sun actually goes down. That's exactly when we light the candles, right? So, yeah, it's always like growing up, my house was like a madhouse. Literally a madhouse, like trying to get everything done before Shabbat, and then last minute, like my mother was always last minute, right? Lighting the candles. So, now we're up to Ruth from the Bible, right? So Ruth was a Moabite princess who actually was a pagan, and she converted to Judaism, right? So, as told in the book of Ruth, Ruth was a Moabite princess who was dissatisfied with the idol worship of her own people. The paradigm of loyalty and faith. She accompanied her mother-in-law, Naomi, to the land of Judah, accepting a life of poverty among people she admired. Upon arrival in Bethlehem, she found kindness, acceptance, and love, becoming the ancestress of King David. Right. So another thing is that Moabite males are, for some reason, they're not allowed into, I'm not sure why. There's a special reason why they're not allowed into Judaism, but she was a woman, so that's why she was accepted. And King David comes from her, right? King David. So you want to see the summary of the book of Ruth, right? It's a whole story about Ruth, right? It must have been like a different life back then, because like there was the tribes and they had their ways, and right, they're very interesting of how she gave birth and all that. And yeah, that's the book of Ruth. Then there's 7 classic reasons for Shavuot flowers, why we have Shavuot, why we do flowers. There's reasons why we are supposed to have flowers on Shavuot, and I'm too tired to talk about it. I'm exhausted. It's very interesting. Okay, so yeah, that's the story. I'm not going to read them now because I'm just way too tired. You know what I'm saying? But it's very interesting, right? It's been interesting. Should we go look at the news? She goes see. Masked gunmen shoot at Gazans seeking humanitarian aid. According to IDF, the video captured earlier in the day shows men throwing rocks and firing weapons at fellow Palestinians trying to get food, right? This is Hamas, you know? GHF proves IDF did not shoot at innocent Gazans at aid distribution sites. Everybody's like trying to smear Israel, right? Hamas couldn't know I was gay. Emily DeMaria reveals shocking details of Gaza. Right, so this girl, if she told them that she was gay, they would kill her, right? No one should want ceasefire in Gaza until clear defeat of Hamas. IDF intercepts Houthi missiles. Hamas ready to begin new hostage talks. Okay. Katz orders continued IDF operations in Gaza, regardless of whatever, of hostage deal. Saudi Arabia foreign minister says Israel's blocking Ramallah meeting, proof of extremism. Really? Really? The forced converts of the Inquisition, rediscovering Spanish, Portuguese roots. Yeah, so I'm still reading. I'm in the middle of... I read a few short books, right? And I was in the middle of reading the Spanish Civil War between 1935 or something till 1940. And when it ended, and a lot of people were killed back then, but I wonder... because it became fascist, right, and it was ruled by Franco. Franco won in the end, this guy. And he ruled Spain until 1970s, right? I wonder what happened to the Jews, if there were Jews in Spain, right? What happened to the Jews in the Spanish Civil War? Let's go see. What happened to the Jews in the Spanish Civil War of 36, I think. 19, not 1035, 19. Alright, during the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939, Jews actively participated in the International Brigade, fighting against the nationalist forces of General Francisco Franco. Because Hitler supported the nationalists. According to the Jewish Virtual Library, additionally, many Spanish Jews faced persecution and displacement during the war, with some relying on the Spanish government for protection. Though their actions were often inconsistent, according to Abisham. Yeah, so it's complicated. Repatriation of Spanish Jewish citizens from Western Europe. In 1943, Germany demanded the repatriation of Spanish Jewish citizens from Western Europe. While some Jews were allowed to return to Spain, the government restricted entry, limiting the numbers of those who could be saved. Refugee assistance. Spanish authorities facilitated the transit of Jewish refugees through their territory, particularly from France, but also allowed some Jewish refugees to enter illegally across the Pyrenees. Because Franco was, Hitler was on Franco's side, so, and Franco won the Spanish Civil War. So that's another book I should probably read. I got interested in what went on there because so many things were happening at, like, different years. Like, in 1939, there was the Holocaust. The Jews started to get butchered, right, in Germany. And at the same time, different events were happening in different countries, right? So many different things happening. It's very interesting. Let me turn this off. 1 second. Yeah, so I think it's also good for peaceful Palestinians that does not hate Jews, yeah. Does not try finding peaceful Palestinians, right? That Hamas has gotten. Palestinians are also victims of Hamas. Not all of them, you know, like a lot of Hamas is made up of the people, right? The people, it's like, you know, like Israel's like a civilian army. So Hamas, they're made up of, a large portion of them are made up of Gazan people's families, you know, like they believe in it. They believe in Hamas, right? They celebrated on October 7th. There are some that were victimized, of course, that were tortured and victimized. A lot of them actually were tortured by the organization that was in charge, but they're still, like, they're very fanatical people. Do you know what I'm saying? If you love Palestinians, Nazi Germany, not in Franco's side. They were on. I'm not a fan for communism. Basically, Stalin was on the Republican side of the... Because basically Franco, from what I understand, let me know if I'm wrong, I'm still learning about the Spanish Civil War. Basically, the Republicans they were communists, a lot of them, and they wanted to confiscate the land, and they wanted to reform everything. They wanted to reject Catholicism They wanted to reject tradition. They wanted emancipation. They wanted to also modernize, and they also wanted equal rights for women and everything. And the other side was more traditional, right? The Franco side was they wanted to stick to Catholicism, and they wanted fascism, right? They wanted to be a dictator. They wanted the monarch. They didn't want the monarchy. I'm not sure. It was, but the Stalin was supporting the Republicans, who were the communists, and Franco and his militias were supported by Hitler, and Hitler actually practiced bombing on Spanish cities with their airplanes and their bombs and stuff to refine the use of it in World War II, right? So it's very interesting. I'm not sure how... I think that the Republicans might have wanted also communism. They wanted also elections, but the other side, Franco, was a nationalist, and they were nationalists, and there was different factions in that, and then they wanted just a dictatorship, and to stick to the old traditions. I think that, from what I understand reading, I might be wrong, right? And so the Nazis were trying to support the nationalists, and Stalin was supporting the Republicans. But the problem was that eventually there was like this Munich agreement, right, where I forget what it was about. Like they were supposed to be pacifist or whatever, not get involved in the war. And then what ended up happening was that Stalin went and did an agreement with Hitler, and then that didn't work out. And then, I don't understand. Like, basically, Hitler and Stalin were both supporting different factions. They wanted an ally, basically. They wanted Spain as an ally. So if the Republicans, communists, would have won, then they would have been the ally to Stalin. And Hitler hoped that the nationalists would win, because then they would be his ally. But when they did win the Civil War, what happened was that they didn't help Hitler in any way. Once the nationalists were in power, they didn't help Hitler in his way. They weren't an ally for him. So, and then Hitler went and they made a peace agreement, him and Stalin, and then he broke it, and he went into Russia and killed everybody there, right? And that's when we have Babi Yar happening and the slaughter of the Jews in Kharkov, and it's very interesting. I do not say that communism is good, but there were communist individuals who risked their lives to rescue Jews from the Nazis. There were a lot of different people from a lot of different that were rescuing Jews at the time, right? Like, from what I understand, learning, right? There were nuns who were rescuing Jewish people. There were Christians. There were communists. There were even Nazis who were in the Nazi party that went against Hitler. Not a lot. More should have, because at the end of the day, 6 million Jews were murdered systematically, but there were those that stood up and tried to do the right thing, right? Individuals who were just good people, regardless of what they believed, regardless of what system they were in. Like, communism is a system, right? And Nazism was a system, and all these being a Christian is being part of a system. So regardless of what their personal beliefs were religiously, or to be secular, like a communist, they stood up and did the right thing, right? Like, they did what they thought was right individually, regardless of what their ideas were. Do you understand? Even Muslims, some helped, but the Muslims, they basically colluded with Hitler, actually. And that's why 1 million Jews had to leave in 1948. Even earlier, in 1947, they fled. They fled Muslim countries, right? Jews had to flee Muslim countries to Israel. So there are good people, but it's very hard to find. Do you know what I'm saying? It's very hard to find. Of course, there will always be individuals, but it's so few. It's so few. In Gaza, not one person stood up for any Jew in Gaza. Not one. With the hostages, with everything. Not one of them came forward to Israel as of yet to tell us where the hostages are. So what does that say about that society that not even one person from Gaza is willing to do the right thing, to risk their life, to do the right thing? That's how evil the society of the Gaza is. Which is very sad, because there are stories of people who, were part of Hamas, like the prince, the green prince, son of Hamas, right? He left that death cult, and he stands for Israel now. He stands up for Israel with the risk of his own life, right? But it's 1 in like 2 million. He's like 1 in 5 million. He is unique. One guy actually came out, that one guy who's being a double agent before October 7, he lied about what the plans of Gazans were, and that's part of the reason why we weren't able to protect ourselves, because he gave wrong information, right? And he's been arrested now in Arab. It's very interesting, right? So, you can have people that are brought up the right way and the right ideology, and they still do bad things. Do you know what I mean? You can have people that are brought up really well, and they choose to do bad. So I think what happens is, a lot of the time when people, they ignore like all these horrible things, even if they're part of a certain society, they rise above. Their consciousness and their soul is of a higher order. Their soul is special, right? And they are able, like, there's this woman who is from Egypt. I don't know if you know her name. And she was kicked out of Egypt. They threatened her life because she stood up for Israel. And she said what happened on October 7th is not acceptable. And then the government didn't protect her, and they said, your life, they wanted, people were coming to her home. They're trying to kill her. So she had to flee out of Egypt, and now she lives in America. And her name is Dahlia. And she stands up for Israel, and she speaks about, now she lost her family. Nobody will talk to her, and it's just very sad. It's a very tragic thing. But some people, they're special, and they choose to do the right thing, and they give up everything. They give their family up. They give their life even to do the right thing, right? So, but they're a special soul. They're unique. They're, like, not everybody's special. Anyway, I need to go to sleep. It's been real. Oh my god, it's 12:07. That's crazy. Time flies. Time flies. Right? It's really late. It's been real. Feel free to subscribe or to unsubscribe. Feel free to like, not to like. Feel free to comment. And thanks for being here with me. Dai Saka Kibara. It means a lot. Have a great day. Okay? Alright? The fact that the whole population in Gaza is so evil is the result of extreme propaganda like in Nazi Germany, right? But not even one person is willing to stand up and do the right thing. You know what I'm saying? Even though they're a death cult and they are willing to die as a martyr for the cause of killing Jews, they're not willing to die to stand up and do the right thing. They're willing to die to kill Jews, but they're not willing to, not even one of them is willing to die to actually come forward and with information about, to do the right thing, to return people that are kidnapped, and to not, to do the right thing, and to go against Hamas. Not one person. What does that say about that society, that not even one person is willing to die to do what's right, but they're willing to die to do what's wrong, right? That is something that is shocking. That is something that is fucked up. That is something that I just thought of now. Do you know what I'm saying? So many of them want to die, but they're willing to die to kill Jews, but they're not willing to die to do the right thing. It's crazy. It's wild, right? That's the society of Gaza, right? Anyway, have a great day, and God help us all, really. Do you know what I'm saying? God help us all. God bless you, and yeah. Okay, bye.